Hochi mama, what a mouthful. Oh, hi everyone. Sorry, it's just an average episode, right?
Sure is.
Wrong. Welcome back to Doctor Who Review, a series that hasn't been away for you at all. But the last time we recorded an episode, which was our Doctor Who Live and Doctor Who Experience episode.
That was last year.
That was in November 2021. And we are sat here now on February the 26th, 2022.
Oh,
what?
2.
And
it just feels like it's been years.
It's been a dog's age, hasn't it, Min?
Been a time.
Yeah, it's been a time lord. 'Cause life, like Panto, and other stuff went on at the start of the year, and it's just been a slow burn to get back into the rhythm. But just less than a week ago, we slapped on The Death of the Doctor to watch in preparation for continuing the marathon.
We did, and then we realised you had to put the disc in. You don't just slap it.
I'm Chris.
I'm not Chris.
And our style of actual tangential bullshit has not improved, as you can tell. This is the second time we've watched this for the show, though.
Yeah, it is.
We watched it in November when I had a week before I had to leave for Panto.
Yeah, we did, but we just couldn't find the time to do this.
Record the review, so...
We watched it again!
Now, we didn't actually watch it on the Sarah Jane Series 4 DVD set. We watched it on the... what do you call it? The Season 10 Doctor Who The Collection set. Because it's a special feature on the bonus disc, is the entirety of this story. Which I think is lovely, because obviously that series ends with the Green Death and Joe's departure from the show, and it's the last story before Sarah Jane joins the cast the next year.
So it just kind of makes sense.
It's sort of cool that you can have a little... for people who've maybe never seen the Sarah Jane Adventures, they just sort of... It passed them by, or, they didn't have any kids or grandkids to watch it with and felt a bit weird about it. Or just, were of an age where they couldn't figure out how to get to the bloody CBBC channel on Freeview. I worked for them and I could never find the damn channel half the time, so don't worry about it. It gives them a chance to, when they're watching this set, be like, so what happened to Joe next? Well, here we go. Because this is special not only for being...
Joe Jones.
I said Joe next, I didn't say Joe Grant.
Joe next isn't her name.
Oh my lord, I'm going to cry.
So am I.
So...
Anyway.
This isn't just special because it's the second time Doctor Who crossed over into the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's special because it's the return of Joe Jones, nee Grant, on screen for the first time properly in a billion bloody years as the character. It is the first and only time, Matt Smith appeared in the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's one of the few stories written by Russell T Davies in the run of Sarah Jane Adventures. Mm-hmm. And it's also the one time we got to see Russell writing for Moffat's Doctor. We got to see what happens when the former showrunner of Doctor Who writes for the next showrunner's first incarnation of the Doctor, but in his show. Not many other writers get the showrunners get the privilege of writing them, really, or the treat to get to tackle it. Stephen Moffat gets to very brief... Obviously, he wrote during his time as an employee under Russell, gets to write David in his own era in the 50th anniversary special. Patrick Ness gets to write the only good scene in all of Class with Capaldi. But we'll get to that one eventually. I'm so sorry. It keeps getting renewed on iPlayer, we have no excuse. I ain't buying it. Oh, God. What's the plot of the Sarah Jane Adventures Series 4 story, The Death of the Doctor, Parts 1 and Part 2?
Sarah Jane, Rani and Clyde. I always want to say Clive. Are around at Sarah Jane's. They are, Skyping Luke, because he's at uni now. Mm-hmm. And then alarms start going off and it's like, oh, somebody is incoming. And it's Unit. And Sarah Jane's like, oh.
Using the music from Murray Gold's arrangement from Modern Who for Unit.
And yeah. And Sarah Jane's like, oh God, what do you want? And he said,
Is that how she says it?
Yeah.
Alright, what do you want?
What do you want?
Yeah.
And they told her that, unfortunately, the doctor has died. And Ronnie and Clyde are like, oh my God, that's awful. And Sarah Jane's like, not buying it. Not buying it at all. Yeah, we'll come with you. Just to see what's going on for this charade. And they get there and, it's all very, you can go here, but you can't go here. And they see a rocket being built for, it's kind of like the Doctor's casket, isn't it? It's going to be shot into space.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they do that so, no planet gets targeted to try and get the Doctor back and resurrect him.
Yeah, so he was a child of the universe. We can't return him to his home planet, but he was fond of Earth, so we'll do the ceremony there and then we'll blast him off. Although we learnt from watching the commentary on episode 1 afterwards with Russell T Davies and Katie Manning that the rocket was really there because it was going to just be the exciting location of the final act of the story.
But it never came.
But they couldn't afford to do it, so they went, never mind. but it's there, and there's all this. Again, the unit base in the mountain is really cool. We've not seen that before. Unit Base 5, that's a cool setting, and the big rocket chamber, probably secretly reusing some digital assets from Utopia and stuff and making it look shinier and cleaner and whatnot.
Do you know why they're in a cave? In a mountain, sorry. No. You're looking at me as if I'm going to tell you a joke.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to bring in a punchline. You legit asking me?
No, I'm going to tell you.
Okay, go on.
Because they are also in the same place that the Thunderbirds are.
Okay, moving on. That's ridiculous. How dare you?
And they had to move from Tracy Island because of global warming and the rising seas. They had to go to a unit.
Do you remember how I said we need to keep these tangent-free?
No, I don't remember.
Swine. Right.
Anyway,
to be fair, I did tell you that in November of 2021.
So the Sarah Jane's like, yeah, still don't believe you. There's
Yeah, who recovered the body of the Doctor? Can you remember what they're called?
Space vultures.
The Shan Sheath, who are effectively undertakers of the universe, who trawl battlefields looking for fallen heroes to bring home. Which is, as a notion, such a somber and romantic idea, isn't it? Mm. It's such a. Could you imagine if that actually happened? After a battle, you have these people that show up. Everyone's aware of them, and they let them get on with it because what they do is they find everyone who has fallen in the conflict. They show them the due respect that anyone who's died in other circumstances, would be shown or could afford. Mm. Their family are informed properly, and it's such a romantic notion, but also delivered in that slightly whimsical and creepy way because they are giant anthropomorphic vultures.
They make me think
they scour. I love the fact that alone is not just adding to the cool Russell T Davies era Doctor Who. There are so many aliens that look like animals, the Sisters of Plenitude and the Jadoon, all these creatures. The Trivators even, bloody flies in boiler suits. But, it's also a hint as to their real intent.
They're gonna...
they're not like real vultures, who scavenge for carcasses to eat. But it's that whole thing of they're up to something simple. It's not that they're nobly sweeping the battlefield. In this particular instance, they're up to something much more dodgy. Yeah, but we'll get to that.
But that's not like them.
Can we be their voiced by?
They are voiced by...
Making his first Doctor Who appearance of many as different characters.
Yes, it's he played Filch in
David Bradley. David Bradley making his first
I'm so
Drew
sorry
appearance. I'm sorry for your loss.
Their costumes are incredible.
Gorgeous.
They look amazing.
They don't have feathered necks. It's part of the robes, but it looks like the classic kind of vulture.
Kind of rough.
Yeah.
Kind of
they look so good.
Sarah Jane's still like, meh, don't believe you.
It's well dodge. at the wake, basically. Oh, when she's like, I want to see him. And the unit officer, we need to get this in because it's quite important. The unit officer,
Doodad Flim Flam.
Colonel Corinne,
Sorry.
played by Layla Ruas, who is really good in this because she doesn't get fleshed out very much. The main attraction of this moving along, barreling at a pace, hour-long kids drama is the Sarah Jane and Joe relationship and the Doctor's inclusion, and obviously the adventures of the younger characters.
Don't tell them.
The villain is...
Spoilers,
God.
sorry guys.
If they're watching this, they've seen it. The villain is, like, she's not given a lot of airtime with what little she's given. She uses it so well. Like toward the end, her motivation, the idea of like, so what do you do? What's in it for you? And she's like, there is nothing for me here anymore. And it's not just like the Earth's small fry, I've got bigger plans. You get the sense that she's like, I want to leave this planet because I have no one. Like she's either screwed up something, or she's lost something, or she's been hurt, like whatever.
Yeah.
She wants off this rock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she's going ahead with it. Because the Shan-Chi's ultimate plan is to, they've got hold of the TARDIS. They have stranded the Doctor somewhere, and they need the key to the TARDIS. Because their plan is, again, it's not evil from their perspective. It's just incredibly foolish. They want to stop death because they're sick of all the suffering. It's not that they're bored of doing it, it's that they're sick of seeing people's lives destroyed by death.
But it's nature.
Exactly, and they've grown sick of the order of things, so they want to prevent death. They essentially want to become like the ultimate superheroes of the universe. Not understanding how that would completely screw over the balance of everything. But to get the key to the TARDIS, because that's the one thing they not counted on. The Doctor still has the key when they strand him. So they have this device called the Memory Weave, and that's what the whole story's been about. It's that they're getting friends of the Doctor together at this wake, so that they can basically induce a psychic state and use the memories that those people have to form a TARDIS key that they can then use at the cost of the lives of the people that they'll do the experiment on, because the machine will kill them to do it. Unfortunately, it's hard to pin down friends of the Doctor's and get them into one place. We get a lovely throwaway line that Sir Alistair Gordon Lethbridge-Stewart, thank you very much, is still stranded in Peru, or what have you. It's one of those things where it's like one of the usual places he ends up being stuck when he needs to be in the show.
Where is it they always go? Where is it? Well, the peace conference.
Stranded in Peru, it says here. So
where is
Geneva?
Geneva, that's it.
So he's not here, and apparently early on in the development of this story, would this have been before or after Nicholas Courtney's passing? Let's see. This was 2010. Nicholas Courtney left us in 2011, so he was about. So, yeah, during the early planning of this, at some point, the plans were for the Brigadier to make an appearance. But there had also been plans for the Brigadier to show up like once a year anyway, because of how much they'd enjoyed having him in that Series 2 story.
Because he was a precious, precious man.
But the main objective of this always had been to give Russell the chance to bring Joe Grant back to the world of Doctor Who. So Katie Manning gets to reprise the role. She shows up with her grandson, Santiago Jones, which is a great name. And tell us a little bit about him. Why is he an interesting inclusion?
He is an interesting inclusion because he is the same kind of age as Rani and Clyde. Whoopsie. So they get along while Sarah Jane and Joe get along. But we missed out that the is it Colonel? did you say,
Okay.
the woman?
Also, like, a year later, he goes on to be in, like, Game of Thrones, and then after that goes on to be Iron Fist, the least liked Netflix MCU character. But he's great in this. It's Finn Jones. Colonel Karim.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We're not doing the plot chronologically, because if they're watching this, they've already seen the story.
No, I'm just saying that they're...
I was just worried that you were too worried you were missing stuff out. Go on.
Sarah Jane says she wants to see him, but
Yes.
the Colonel says he was hurt. And
that's all she said, yeah.
And Sarah Jane's face just drops, and it's like, oh no, maybe he has died.
That was such, again, testament to Liz Sladen, because that is such a, you know exactly what the Colonel means and exactly what's gone through Sarah Jane's head in that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, the reality, the potential reality of this hits her in that moment.
Yeah.
I love
Which is sad. And then she sits down, she's like, oh, I always thought that I would have felt it.
I was going to say, that's the cool notion about this, is like, she's like, I don't believe it because it doesn't feel like it's happened. And I always thought I'd felt it. So when she meets Joe, Joe's the same.
Yeah.
Them meeting for the first time is lovely.
Yeah, it is.
Because Joe obviously has heard about Sarah Jane from, like, Benton and whatnot, like when she's gone back and visited Unit.
Oh, Benson?
No, Benton... Oh, God. Go back and watch our Third Doctor videos, folks. Hidden jokes are popping. But, like, she's obviously heard about Sarah Jane from the Unit lads when she's visited them.
Yeah.
And Sarah Jane heard about Joe from the Unit lads and from the Doctor. So they're both... And I think that was why it was such a great choice, not just because their chemistry's fun, because they'd, like, known each other outside of Doctor Who, like, from convention circuit and this, that and the other. But, like, they are the previous companion and the following companion of the Doctor at the exact same time. Like, chronologically, then back to back. So it's really fun to know that, yeah, no, they knew about each other, even though they never met, because, like, their friends would talk about them.
Yeah.
And they get on like a house on fire, because of course you would. You're like one of a very, very small amount of people in the history of the universe who's had that same experience. So while they try to sort of debate what could be going on, like you said, the Rani and Clyde and Santiago keep bumping into this blue grosk, which is like a grask, but blue. And some of them working at the unit base.
Because did they get stranded?
They got stranded and they just, like, they started chipping in for repairs, like a thank you for being helped out, essentially. And this one grass keeps, like, calling Clyde a smelly boy. He says he smells. And eventually says he smells of time. Because at the same time all this is going on, as soon as he gets to the base, Clyde's, like, hand keeps crackling with the blue sparkle, like the blue electric flash in his palm, like it did from the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. When he got hit with all that Artron energy on the exterior of the TARDIS.
And he smooshed against the Torador, yes.
And I love that, like, we never see it in frame together or whatever, but, like, obviously as the story goes on you realise it's doing that because the TARDIS is nearby and the Doctor's trying to get in touch with it, and it's like there's this whole thing of there's an ongoing connection. Because by the end of part one, when they're all running away, they realise what the Shan-Sheath are up to. I love the way it starts. Clyde's, like, left hand isn't his left hand anymore. It's just the way that Danny Anthony delivers it. He's like, that's not my hand. Because last time I checked, I'm not white. It's just so well delivered.
Yeah.
And then, poof! Matt Smith appears, swapping places with Clyde, which is a great idea. I love the idea the Doctor's, like, not quite able to get there, but he's able to borrow Clyde's physical space.
That's crazy.
Briefly, because the Artron energy, the connection, he's managed to, like, broadcast. Because the Shan-Sheath have stranded him on this planet, this sort of asteroid or planetoid or whatever that's covered in just wreckage.
Yeah.
Amy and Rory aren't around because they're on a honeymoon at this point on a planet that's on its honeymoon.
Yeah.
So this could be set before or after A Christmas Carol. I mean, it came out before A Christmas Carol, but it could be set before or after. And of course, you get that lovely scene where, like, he takes Jo and Sarah Jane with him, swapping places with Clyde, and it's the first, and I think it's one of only, like, 2 appearances of an alien world in the show. Because the whole thing with Sarah Jane Adventures is it doesn't leave Earth. I think there's a couple of moments where characters are in the atmosphere, But like, you know, the whole point is it's like boom.
It's boom.
Yeah, and you get that lovely moment where Sarah Jane, like Clyde's come back from the thing. She's like, "You're not supposed to do that. You're forbidden from you're forbidden from like interplanetary travel. Travel by no. I'm thinking of Wedding Sarah Jane." She's like, "Can we go to the planet?" She's like, "No. Besides, you've been banned by the Jadoo." And David Tennant's doctor in the background, so I was looking at his face. I'm like, "Wait, what? Oh, never mind."
Yeah.
Because like they've been barred from travelling to the stars.
Yeah, that's when they go. That's when they go into TARDIS. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this whole thing of them switching back and forth, and when she realizes that there's now a married couple in the TARDIS, you get this beautiful little scene between Katie Manning and Matt Smith, where she's like, "Oh, that's the only reason I stopped travelling with you is because I was going off to get married." And obviously, they don't dwell on it in this, but we've talked before about the subtext in The Green Death, that last scene, is that Joe and the Doctor's relationship was... There was obviously like a professor-student vibe to it, because she'd like come in all fresh-faced, no qualifications, and by the end of it was... like, obviously not a science genius, but more than capable enough to, like, deal with it all. And
street smart.
And it was just, like, little things. Like, she had no idea what the tools were in Terror of the Autons. And then by, like, the last couple stories, he'd ask about a thing, she'd just immediately hand it over.
Yeah.
And it's just these little indications of, like, the character growth by being around each other and learning from each other. And there's this sort of... It's not so much romantic, but definitely wistful vibe to the end of The Green Death, where the Doctor kind of, like, does the toast and he has a quick chat with her, and then he just sneaks away, gets in Bessie and drives home, and you can tell that he's just heartbroken that she's going away. And it's not out and out like, you know, I was going to ask her to marry me, Joe, but you know, it's that whole thing of clearly there is a very deep love and affection there.
Yeah.
And it was easier for him to just move on and just turn around and walk away, because otherwise he'd, I don't know, make a scene or get really upset or pissy about it or whatever. He's had a long time since then. But obviously for Joe it's been, in comparison, like 40 years. So she's probably picked up on this thing of like, why did you
never come back?
Yeah. And I love that, because like when she hears from Sarah Jane, like that he's seen her twice. Well, technically it's been 4 times, right? School reunion, Journey's End, End of Time, and then Wedding of Sarah Jane. Yeah, 4 times they've seen each other.
Yeah.
And that is really a unique case. And the fact that she then is like, wait, you saw him again? Wait, what do you mean, which time? The first time? And it's like, oh my god. But I love his explanation.
The thing is,
Because
Joe
she's talking about like
so
doing all these things.
heartbroken.
Yeah, because like she's spent her whole life with Clifford, and their kids and their grandkids, like going around the world protesting, fighting for stuff here and there, everywhere. Like they've been doing charity work and like scientific expeditions, and like they've been doing so much. But she suddenly becomes that like early 20-something, doesn't she? Of just like, why did you go away?
You were my best friend.
Like, she doesn't regret anything she's done, but you can tell she's been thinking of the days that could have been.
Yeah.
And I love that he nails it perfectly. Because Smith is playing a character that the last time we saw these two interact looked like John Pertwee. He's a very different man. Obviously, different actor, but he's a very different man. And you can tell that he's kind of waiting to get a word in and go, yeah, but... And I love the explanation. He's like, how the hell was I meant to find you? The TARDIS could never pin you down. Like, you were travelling non-stop for like the last 40 years. I could never find you.
But what's cute though is that he tried.
Yeah, and we find out... Russell T Davies puts in a few jabs in here for pissy fans who get hung up on the little details and annoyed by stuff, and I love it, including that David Tennant's Doctor's victory lap of seeing friends as he's dying of radiation and resetting for his regeneration included everyone. Not just like the Tennant era companions. Everyone. And he never got to You never got to see Jo, but he got to find out about what she did. He could never pin her down, but he found out where she'd been, what they got up to, like, all that stuff. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And although he's obviously learned a little bit about what's to come, it's like 12 grandchildren, 13 on the way. He's dyslexic, but don't worry, he's a great swimmer. And just like, oh god, that's so cute. Like, he's so invested that he's trying to find out as much as he can.
That's adorable.
It's just so sweet. I love it. And that whole moment where she's like, it really is you. And it's like, hello. And they have like a little cuddle. It's just like, yay.
I mean, he wasn't very nice to her when he first saw her. What does he say?
Well, they talk about that in the commentary, don't they? She says, like, but you're not him. It's like, or it says something like he's regenerated. Sarah Jane says that, but he's regenerated. And Jo goes, what, into a baby? And then he says, like, oh, you think of it from my perspective. Think of it from my point of view. Last time I saw you, what, 22, 23? It's like someone baked you. And in the commentary, Katie Manning and Russell T Davies talk about the fact that she sort of goes like a shocked little face, and then he like cracks a smile at her, and she starts laughing, and they have a lovely little moment, and then the Shanshith arrive. But for the pacing of the scene, in the edit, it just felt like the scene slowed down a little too much, considering the cliffhanger's about to start, where the Doctor's getting, obviously it's Sarah Jane Adventures, which gets cliffhangers more than the modern Doctor Who does.
Yeah.
And he gets, like, he's getting electrocuted and Clyde's stranded on the alien world, and that's the cliffhanger, and it's a pretty great one. Yeah, but so because that is it's just edited to when she's like, like shocked face, and then the Shanshith interrupt. I think it's a funny little line though.
It is funny.
It's a cute little line, it's a cute little jab at your friend. Stuff you love about this story, go. I love the Grosk having a little den in the middle of the vents with cold pizza.
With pizza, yeah.
Such a nice little touch. And learning, and I also love that we learn really organically about Santiago's life in a way that is clearly going, we'll probably see these guys again.
Mm.
And that was the plan.
Yeah.
I think I'll have to consult. There's a Doctor Who magazine special about the Sarah Jane Adventures, which talks about what the 5th and 6th season, the rest of the 5th and the 6th season would have had in it, including stories that some later then got adapted into versus Alien stories, like the 13th Floor.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think Series 5's finale was meant to have a few returning characters come back as part of it, including Jo.
Excuse me.
And Santiago. What do you like? What do you like?
I love the villains. I love Jo. I love Matt Smith in it.
Do you like the sarky little jabs to wind up fanboys, like the regeneration cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, are you always... What does he say? Are you always white?
It's when they're scurrying back to the vents and the Doctor has to... I love that big rescue when he has to scurry backwards. And Clyde's just staring into his eyes. He's like, even your eyes are different. Doctor's like, what? It's like, your eyes... I don't know, I knew, like, you'd all change, but for some reason I just assumed that the eyes would be the same. Like, do you look the same every time? And he's like, no, so you're not white every time? No. I can look like anything. And Clyde says, how many times can you do it? And the Doctor goes, 507. And Clyde goes, oh, wow. And it's delivered completely straight by Matt Smith. And it's clearly just a
little joke.
A little, like, he's not making a joke to anyone. He's just giving any old answer so that they can move on with the conversation. But it wound people up so much when this went out.
Jeez, it's so sad.
And by people, I mean pedantic fools who get easily wound up by this stuff.
Imagine living your life like that.
It is cute. I mean, obviously there'll be like people genuinely who are like neurodivergent on the autistic spectrum who suddenly were confused by it, for example. So they're like, no, hang on, this doesn't make sense. But I'm talking about the people who pissed and moaned about it forever, and still do. I love it. Like, not only are they going, he doesn't have to be a white guy, he doesn't have to even be a man, but also, hey, regenerates 507 times, get over it, losers. It's like, that's hilarious, that's funny.
That is funny.
I love that they overload it with memory.
Yeah.
The memory weave, that's how they defeat it. Using, Dr. Jo and Sarah Jane, like, adventures, but also the Sarah Jane Adventures. Like, once the kids get involved, it's like everything you've seen over the last 4 seasons is suddenly relevant to helping save the day.
Yeah.
It's a really nice touch.
And that's a really interesting, like, Oh God, get there. It's almost like we're recording this at night.
What a night!
I really like the machine that they use. You know, like
The memory.
if you imagine it, it will appear.
It's a great idea, isn't it?
It is really cool. Except the fact that
It's being used for.
it kills them afterwards.
It'll moid them.
But yeah, they overload it, don't they? And it explodes. But obviously, it sets fire to the room that they're in.
It kills the Shanshith and the Colonel.
It does.
They are, as far as I remember. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
No.
Please do. I think they are the only deaths that happen in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Because that was one of the stipulations of the show, is no one can die in it.
Not when Russell's doing it.
Well, he set that rule.
Oh.
And then broke it.
What a guy.
No alien planets, and no one can die. And both things happened in this story.
Yeah, and so the doctor's just leaning against the door like, I'm so sorry. Isn't it?
It's going to be like a final because the first explosion or whatever, like things start to collapse, and that's what kills the Shanshith and the Colonel. But the next one's going to be like a full-on like radioactive explosion. And
he comments on how ironic it is that they came here for his funeral.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was Joe that said it, innit? That they came here for his funeral.
And it turned out to be ours.
Theirs.
And that's when he sort of goes like, shoot. It's
The
like
casket.
the coffin.
The lead line casket.
Because it's this lead line thing. Because, and again, the story organically explaining it earlier, it's because it was something that was going to be shot into space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's ready to withstand, like, cosmic radiation and everything. Get in the bloody
I don't know
coffin.
why you'd really need it to be that, because he's already dead. But anyway.
And it's more the symbolic thing, isn't it? Of like, it's a tomb that will float through eternity.
I mean, I hope they held their breath, because...
You said that at the time, and I was like, it's a kid's show, and they're in it for like a minute.
It's something that's annoyed me since Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, when he's in that friggin'
Fridge.
It's like...
Nuke the fridge, folks.
Well, one, how did you get out of it? Two, you would not have been able to breathe. And three...
Why didn't you flatten that CGI gopher?
You definitely would have died. And that's why I don't like Indiana Jones and the Crystal so they end up jumping in this casket.
It's an excuse to have them giggling.
And they have a little bit that, like, cuddling, like, squinting and bracing themselves. And then the Doctor and Clyde and Rani open the casket, and Santiago. And they're like, oh my gosh, laughing. Oh. Yeah, and then don't they jump in TARDIS?
Yeah, we get a brief scene of like Joe reacting to being in the TARDIS and stuff. And
it still smells the same.
Yes!
It's like, oh, Joe, you're so cute.
That is such a wonderful observation. No matter how different it looks, it still smells the same. It's like, oh, that's such a cute note. Because you wouldn't think about that, would you? Oh, that's so cute.
It's almost like Joe is one of the best companions.
Well, the Doctor leaves. Joe and Santiago leave after like giving everybody a big love and a kiss. She's like, "Oh, you're so brave, so gorgeous, you're so beautiful, and so wonderful." It's just like, oh god, she's amazing. And as she leaves, we get this gorgeous little PS. Our first like in canon catch up with where everyone is, because Rani and Clyde say to Sarah Jane like, "So are there more of you out there? Like, are there more people that he's travelled with from Earth?" And she's like, if you look, occasionally I'll go on the internet and I'll look up things. And Clyde goes like, well, you can't exactly just Google the word TARDIS. And she went, well, I mean...
You'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised. So, characters we learn about. Liz Shaw, who, again, if Caroline John had been with us, it would have been a wonderful addition. But Caroline John passed away in... 2012.
Oh, no way.
So she was around for the filming of this, but as far as I'm aware, she wasn't well enough to participate.
Oh.
Again, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong there, if I'm getting the information wrong, but I think that's the reason why. Because that would have been... Could you imagine if the 3 unit era companions all would have been in the story?
Oh my god, that would
have been lovely. but we learn
sorry.
that Liz is working on a unit moon base. So goddamn Liz Shaw, science genius, is on the moon. Working on a unit base on the moon.
Because why not?
Absolutely fitting for Liz Shaw. Absolute and well deserved, because it makes you realise that even though we didn't see the character again, for stupid ass reasons, she went on to basically be like the coolest freaking unit scientist
Badass
out of
woman.
all of them.
Badass woman scientist.
So I love that. The Brigadier obviously doesn't mention that he's in Peru. Ben, Jackson and Polly are married and run an orphanage in India.
So
Ben and Polly are together and running an orphanage in India.
Ben and Polly are hilarious together.
I bloody love that. Tegan Javanka became an advocate for Aboriginal rights, so Tegan's still on Earth, still rocking stuff.
Did she marry Nissa?
Well, give me a minute.
Oh.
Well, I'll tell you now. The Doctor Who Lockdown 2020 short, Goodbye Sarah Jane Smith. I think it's called Goodbye Sarah Jane Smith. It's something close to that. The one that Russell wrote. Where you've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's wonderful. Like Katie Manning, Sophie Aldred, and you know Angeline and Danny and Tommy come back for it. And we get these lovely explanations as to what's gone on, and some things that don't explain what's happened, but make you go, "Oh my god, how did that happen?" So like Sky from series 5, you know, her adoptive daughter, is like a being of pure energy from the cosmos who comes back down for the funeral and stuff, and you're like, wait, what's happened there? Like, just these notions that make you go, there's been more adventure. Of course there was more adventures after what we saw in the show. Of course there were. And like the trick, turns out the funeral was a trap by the trickster, but everyone basically defeats him by telling him to piss off or something like that. They do
Does
something.
he appear and they just go, oh,
No,
fuck off.
they do something that like gets rid of him, and it's like, that's brilliant. And then there's this sort of notion at the end from Rani that she's not gone, she's out there somewhere with the Doctor,
like
and there's this vague notion that perhaps she's travelling somewhere with the character we sort of know as the curator, and it's like, that's a cute idea. So whether she has actually passed away or not, it's a nice little kind of open book still, because the way the show ended open, and Russell said in the show, if he ever did anything in the main show again, or he politely requested of, like, you know, Stephen Moffat, don't acknowledge Banman Road and Sarah Jane. And let it be that they lived on and carried on doing stuff. Like, don't give a definitive ending. Because the Brigadier's... Nicholas Courtney's passing is referenced as the Brigadier being confirmed to have passed away in the show at one point.
Yeah.
And it's used contextually. In fact, it's used in the series we're going to review shortly.
I know.
And it's used beautifully
Makes
as a
me
character
sad.
point for the Doctor. But he said, don't do that with Sarah Jane. Like, leave it open-ended. But when they did this for Lockdown Who, it was obviously a tribute to Liz Sladen. And you can choose to take it as canon if you like. In it, there is mentions of Tegan and her wife Nissa. So Tegan and Nissa got together. And I'm like, wait, hang on. Nissa got back. Okay, fair enough.
I don't like those characters. I thought they were extremely irritating. Nissa was kind of...
There.
No need for her to be there.
Nissa was there. Nissa's most interesting and coolest stuff that Sarah Sutton clearly got, you know, sank her teeth into, her meatiest stuff, was in her first couple of stories. With Tremus and
I love
Keeper of Traken and her father and everything. And Tegan again has her moments, but we both of us, if you go back to our Fifth Doctor stuff, we just didn't really care for that era overall. There were stories we liked, there were moments we liked, and we think that all the actors are good.
Absolutely.
But there is just nothing about that combo of those TARDIS teams that worked for us. Like, it only starts to work when it becomes just Turlo and Perry for one story, and then Perry.
Oh God, Turlo. Gee.
Well, do you not remember? In his last one, he stepped up in a way where you were like, he was really good in this. I was like, yeah, Mark Strickson is good. It's just these TARDIS teams are also...
Do you know what's really funny?
It's all that entire era. Everyone's like vibe is based around where they either hate each other or they're trying to kill one of them, and there's just everyone's really antsy with each other. I don't know. But Tegan and Nissa getting together is such a sweet notion. We learn in this that a woman called Dorothy has raised billions of pounds through a non-profit organisation called A Charitable Earth. Which isn't obvious at first, because people will be going, Dorothy? Dorothy? Is that Dodo reference? No, it ain't Dodo. Is that
Dodo.
Dodo Chaplet?
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
It's just like,
What has she been up to?
That's really obscure.
What has she been up to? Don't explain any
Don't
of the
go
audios
there.
or the BBC books, folks. We don't want to know.
Don't go there.
There's a couple of explanations to what happens to her after the War Machines. One of them is that she gets murdered not long after, for various reasons.
She got sick and lived in a house and then just stayed there.
Had a happy time.
Lived happily ever after.
Yeah, Dorothy is we learn that that's Ace's name in her first appearance in Dragonfire. So
I've always remembered that for some reason.
well, her name's Dorothy.
Yeah,
I think it's because you were partially like, her name can't be Ace. So when you learn, oh, it's Dorothy, you're like, oh, right, that's her name. But Ace is a nickname that everyone calls her because she always says, oh, Ace.
I thought Ace was like a shortened version of another name, and I was thinking, oh, Dorothy. How'd you get Ace from Dorothy? Well, obviously you don't. So. But anyway,
we get a mention of, and obviously, A Charitable Earth. Ace. I've still not read it as of this recording, but there was a BBC book from a couple of years ago, co-written by Sophie Aldred and someone else called At Childhood's End, which is a story about Ace in the present day using this continuity setup as its premise, with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor featured in the story, as well as an appearance by the Seventh Doctor in present day for Ace, which is adapted, a scene from the book is adapted very briefly as the trailer for the season 26, the collection set, where he arrives at the office building and like you see his silhouette through the door in one of the corridors, and it's like, oh, that's so cool. Luna, come sweetheart. Sorry, one of our cats is being mischievous. And my favourite, and I know this warmed your winter cockles, there are two school teachers, professors at Cambridge University, called Ian and Barbara Chesterton. So, not only Ian and Barbara still around, not only still teaching, but now at university, so they'll be paid much better, frickin' married!
Yay!
And the best part is the little notion.
A giant cat arrived at the end of the story and ate everyone.
They apparently haven't aged a day since the 60s. Now, whether that's just the notion of like they've always. Whether that's just the notion of they've always been like.
Oh, God.
Youthful and vibrant and energetic and happy and what, full of life or whatever.
Hello.
Or whether it's a genuine, oh no, they haven't aged since the 60s, which means at some point in their story something happened that prevented that from happening and they don't know, or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll never know, but that's the whole point. It's this obscure, magical notion that, I don't know if you agree with this, it just feels right.
Yeah, it does.
Do you know what I mean? It just feels right that they get to have this little extra adventure which we get no context for. There was because I. Chesterton's name is listed as being like the head of the board of governors for Coal Hill a couple times in little prop moments. I think it's in like Day of the Doctor and the Caretaker. You see his name on stuff, and in Class as well. And there was this notion at one point in the development of Class that they were going to get William Russell to cameo. Like not like a full on role in it, but like sort of him leading like maybe a council meeting or or being at the opening of the new sixth form wing or whatever.
Yeah.
And the moment I heard that, I was like, nope, please don't.
Yeah.
Because then it negates that wonderful PS in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Because then you've got to admit that Barbara's not around and he is an old man now.
Yeah.
And that just kind of... Obviously, William Russell's an old man. He's more than allowed to be an old man. But, like, it sort of ruins that magical notion of the characters. And he still, often on Big Finish and things like that, gets to play the version of himself in his 20s, 30s quite often, and does a wonderful job, and a wonderful job playing the First Doctor as well, when it's the narrated stories. But yeah, it's such a sweet note, and kind of bittersweet for this video, because this is the last Sarah Jane Adventures thing we're going to talk about in our marathon. If you want to know our thoughts of the show overall and some specific stories, go back and watch our Sarah Jane Adventures Doctor Who review.
It's a very interesting journey for myself.
Yes, because go and watch it, folks. It's been fun to revisit it. And do you still feel like at some point, we said we'd do it, but not as like a video series? Do you still feel at some point like just visiting it as a binge watch?
Yeah, because it is fun.
I'm so happy about that, because it is one of my favourite, it's one of my favourite Doctor Who things, is the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's just so on point and so pure.
The thing is, when something has been made by people that have such a passion for it and that love it so much, I appreciate that much more now. Because I can see it so obviously in Sarah Jane Adventures. Yeah,
and especially this story where you can tell everyone, Gary Russell's script editor on this one, that he was having a goddamn field day.
Oh, Gary.
Sorting this one out and making it work and everything and putting it together. Do you recommend this to Doctor Who fans who haven't checked out Sarah Jane Adventures?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purely for Jo Grant dropping flowers and saying that she shouldn't have brought them, but they were just so lovely. And the vase was stunning, hand blown from somewhere.
Yeah, well, it wasn't hand blown.
Not hand blown.
It'd be very hot.
Purely for that. Because she's adorable and hilarious.
I love that that's a detail from the watch along you specifically remembered. It's such an obscure line, but it's such a wonderfully Jo kind of piece of dialogue.
I love Jo. I really, really loved Jo. And seeing her again made me so happy. And if you're not following, oh crap, I just forgot her name.
Katie Manning?
Katie Manning on Instagram. Why? Because
she's very good at social media. She's sort of
so cute.
She uses it as like a very open family update thing.
She posts pictures of behind the scenes and at conventions and things, which are just so sweet. So wrap your peepers around it because it's very cute.
I'm happy to report she is an absolute sweetheart in real life.
I sat next to her at the Doctor
Who celebration 2013. Yeah, we got there on the Saturday afternoon, about 3 or 4 hours before the day the Doctor went out, and then we worked there on the Sunday. And you spent a bit of downtime with Katie Manning, just sat at the table.
But my dumbass had no idea who she was.
Well, to be fair, at that point, you hadn't really watched much of that era beyond seeing it when you were younger.
I'm angry at myself because I would have cried and said, "I love you. I love you."
I'm trying to think who else we sat with at that table and had a chinwag for a bit. I briefly introduced you to Annette Badland, didn't I?
I was freaking terrified of everybody.
Yeah, you remember that though? Lovely Annette Badland.
I felt so...
She sat down. She wasn't shaking her booty. She was sat down at the table. Because obviously I'd met her doing Wizards vs. Aliens behind the scenes. So I was like, oh, hello, how are you doing? You alright?
Hello.
Hello, love.
Hello, how are you?
You shared a lift with John Leeson and God, who else was in there?
It was
Adjoa and did Camille Kajuri attend that? Jackie? I can't remember if she did.
I don't know. I would have absolutely lost my shit if I'd seen her.
Oh, Jacqueline Thingy, Sylvia Noble. She was in the lift as well. Donna's mum.
She was.
Yeah. Who else was in the lift that day?
Martha's mum.
Joe and yeah. Can't remember now. It was a lovely time, and we'll probably talk about it near the 50th anniversary videos.
Oh my god!
But right now,
I've just remembered something else.
From that event?
Yeah.
Save it for that event. But right now, leave your comments down below. Have you seen Death of the Doctor? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you love the fact that our cat wanted to photobomb the whole video? Let us know in the comments down below. We will catch you next time for A Christmas Carol. And then when we've read that, we'll watch the Doctor Who story called Christmas Carol.